At SBA Canada, we believe that it's important to reconsider what it means to be a professional. In this presentation, we take a critical look at the history of the professions. We look at the three original professions as they evolved in Western Europe, starting in the Middle Ages. According to sociologist Kenneth Hudson in his 1978 book The Jargon of the Professions. The learned professions are traditionally reckoned to be the church, medicine and the law, and there seems to be no reason to add to the list. These were normal careers for university graduates throughout the Middle Ages and until the Industrial Revolution made it possible for a person who had attended a university to think of other ways of making a respectable living. They were called the learned professions because entry to them was restricted to men who had followed a course in the humanities and were accepted as scholars.
In Canada, doctors and most other healthcare workers belong to a college. Every province and territory has a college of physicians and surgeons. The same is true for the different occupational groups of nurses. Doctors and nurses are governed by colleges. Lawyers in Canada belong to law societies. Society is an old French word from the 1500s. It originally referred to companionship or friendly association with others. Today it is used in French and English to refer to a non-profit society. However, in French it also refers to a business corporation. The Canada Revenue Agency translates this phrase: a debt or share of a small business corporation, under any of the following circumstances.
Ou une action d'une société, ex-petite entreprise, et ce, dans l'une des circonstances suivantes.
The word profession originated as a profession of religious faith. Eventually, it also came to mean an occupation in which a professed knowledge of some subject, field, or science is applied.
The ancient religious notion of professing faith and serving God evolved into an oath to serve the common good. While the three original professions required that practitioners had been to university and studied the liberal arts, there was no such pretense about the other medieval guilds. There were guilds of weavers, fishmongers, blacksmiths, and many others throughout Western Europe. There were even guilds of students at the new medieval universities in Italy and France. These were organized specifically to protect the interests of students, who had become important consumers in the university towns. Law professors also organized into guilds, to ensure that teachers had to be selected from their members. In short, they created a closed shop. In both cities, these guilds resorted to a withdrawal of services to achieve their goals. Law masters refused to teach and students simply stayed away, and took their business elsewhere. The modern labor union was born.
No less an economist than Adam Smith had this to say about urban guilds in 1776. People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public, or in some contrivance to raise prices.
All professional organizations claim to be primarily concerned with protecting the public. Certainly, most of us feel better knowing that a surgeon, cutting into our flesh with a scalpel, has been rigorously trained. We welcome that kind of protection. But it is equally true that professional organizations also serve the interests of their members. According to a 2018 article in the Harvard Business Review, in the 1950s, approximately 5% of American workers had an occupational license. Each of these workers had completed post-secondary training and passed an exam to earn a license to practice their profession. Today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that 23% of full-time workers have a license.
Universities throughout the world have expanded to meet the demand for these new and emerging professions. The professions seek the prestige and stature conferred on their trade by the descendants of those first European universities. In our so-called information age, universities have expanded on an industrial scale. While the study of the sciences has unquestionably benefited society, we are concerned that the study of the liberal arts has not done much to improve our critical thinking abilities. It isn't that the social sciences aren't important. It is simply that the social sciences are not sciences. Scholars in the various social sciences too often protect their work from attack. Neoliberal economists fight behavioral economists and Keynesians. In anthropology, Those that favor the Clovis first hypothesis savagely attack those who discover older archaeological sites that put their Clovis first theories at risk. Studying introductory economics, anthropology, or sociology at university does very little to encourage critical thought. It primarily serves to indoctrinate students in the conventional wisdom common in their chosen profession. In my profession of accounting, neoliberal economics holds sway. It forms part of what I call business school orthodoxy. I recently filed a tax return for a young woman who claimed legal fees to recover about $40,000 in unpaid child support from her deadbeat ex-husband. She ended up paying over $30,000 to her lawyer, which represented more than 75% of the unpaid child support. She isn't unique. Research by the University of Windsor's Professor Julie McFarlane in a 2013 report for the Law Society of Upper Canada suggests that, in some courts, at least 40% of litigants in family cases, and more than 70% of litigants in civil cases, are self-represented. The prevalence of self-represented litigants is unlikely to change. It generally costs hundreds of dollars per hour to hire a lawyer, and this simply isn't affordable for many Canadians.
There are 13 regulatory bodies serving the accounting profession in Canada. They employ at least 760 staff between them, according to self-reported data on the Internet. Together they are responsible for more than $750 million in annual fees, mandatory education, and annual licensing costs. In Canada, there are only 3,000 or so private sector organizations with more than 500 employees. In terms of size, they probably represent less than 0.1% of all private sector organizations in the country. The 10 largest CPA firms, combined with our 13 regulatory bodies, account for about 50% of all public accounting revenues billed by the more than 16,000 CPA firms in Canada. In our view, it is this first group that benefits from the regulation of the accounting industry. While they claim to protect the public from incompetent practitioners, we fail to see how paying regulatory bodies in each separate province or territory to file tax returns serves to protect the public. It seems to us that the Canada Revenue Agency does a much better job of protecting the public from unscrupulous tax practitioners than our professional regulatory bodies. Most practitioners work with small, owner-managed businesses and want to help them succeed. On occasion, they require our help in dealing with overzealous or incompetent tax administrators. Most often, though, we simply help them comply with reasonable income tax and other regulations. We founded SBA Canada because we were concerned that our own accounting profession had lost its relevance. We are unable to think critically about what we do and what our clients and employers need from us. We need to reimagine what professionalism should be.
I'm going to talk about professional, and that's a word we hear all the time. We hear it, we see it, we read it, it's everywhere. We use it so often, I wonder if we really even know, what does it mean? And maybe more importantly, what does being professional mean to you? We can look in a dictionary, and generally we'd find, 3 definitions. And the first is professional pertains to a profession. That kind of makes me scratch my head. But the second definition adds a little bit more. Professional is someone who's paid for their occupation. Makes sense. And the third typical definition is a professional is someone who's achieved a high level of knowledge and skill. Okay. But when I look out in the audience this evening and I apply those definitions, I think it applies to just about everybody. So why is it in a community full of knowledgeable and skilled and paid workers that label professional is given to so few people? Well, I think it has to do likely with the value of the service that's delivered. So what differentiates a professional, say, from a technician? The technician is a very skilled and savvy, knowledgeable person. But the difference between the two, the professional delivers judgment. Yeah, that considered decision, that valued judgment. In fact, the more uncertainties we face, the more important judgment becomes, and more important the role of the professional.
At SBA Canada, we believe in a different kind of professionalism. This discussion was delivered in a TED Talk about 7 years ago by Dale Atkins, and describes the essence of professionalism, as well as you could hope. Dale is an internationally known avalanche and mountain rescue expert, and a member of Evergreen's Alpine Rescue Team, ART. Today, Dale trains rescuers around the world and has published and presented numerous technical papers and general articles on a diverse range of topics from avalanches, mountain rescue, human factors, risk, to decision-making. From his earliest days with ART, Dale learned to embrace uncertainty, and it is a principle that guides him today.
But professional, it's an odd word. I mean, it's not just a label or a title. It also can be used to describe or mean attitudes, behaviors, and actions. Think about it for a minute. If we combine those three, the effect of those three has some pretty profound implications. And the reason is that attitudes drive behaviors, and behaviors drive actions, and then actions reinforce attitudes. And what those three things mean is, what they're describing is literally us as individuals. So that tells me that being professional, that can be applied by anyone and everyone. I think that's a good thing. The process of being a professional, it's not an event. Or maybe I should have said that a little more clearly. The whole way of becoming a professional is not an event, it's a process. It's a journey.